Welcome to Smooth MOOC on Universal Design, Accessibility, Planning, and Social Inclusion. This has been created under the Global Center of Spatial Methods for Urban Sustainability, funded by the German Academic Exchange Service. The modules have been curated under the aegis of Laboratory of Inclusive Design, IIT Roorkee, India. I am Shreya Shetty, co-founder of 369 Ochre Studio, a Bengaluru-based collaborative consultancy service centered on spatial experience design, universal design, and sustainability factors through the lens of architecture, interior design, urban design, research, and academia. I am thrilled to take you through this module step by step. The learning objectives are to identify user needs and stakeholder requirements, examine the roles and expertise of multidisciplinary experts, and apply design thinking methodologies to tackle accessibility challenges in the architectural design. Welcome to Module 10, Design Thinking for Accessibility and Social Inclusion. Begin by exploring how we define design thinking. Design thinking encompasses the cognitive, strategic, practical approaches employed by designers during the human-centric and collaborative design process. The steps iterated in the design thinking process are empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. However, this is not a linear process. It's crucial to revisit these stages as needed based on the defined problem in order to find strategic solutions that takes the user needs into account. Let's look at accessibility and inclusivity through the design thinking process. I'm excited to guide you through our cherished project, Villa number 62, where we applied design thinking at every stage of construction to create an accessible home. Let's start this journey by getting to know our proud owner, Mr. Vinit Shetty.
Mr. Vineet Shetty, fondly called by his loved ones as Boxy, administrator at 369 Ochre Studio, was instrumental in enriching the research initiatives in the research and design labs, particularly in the realm of universal accessibility. As Vineet grew up, he experienced some abnormalities in his legs, and that's when the whirlwind of doctor visits and hospital trips began. After a thorough investigation, he was diagnosed with sensory motor neuropathy, a type of motor neuron disease that affects the peripheral nerves, causing a combination of sensory symptoms, numbness, and motor symptoms, muscle weakness, and coordination difficulties.
Let's start with the first step, empathize. What is empathize? Well, when you feel what the other person is feeling and can mirror their expression, their opinions, and their hopes. And if I would put it in a design terminology, I would say, let's start by walking in their shoes and understanding the more detailed aspects. And why would we do that? Well, you need to discover people's explicit and implicit needs so that you can meet them through the design solution. So our team started this journey by understanding his daily routine. Well, Mr. Vinit Shetty used an electric recliner sofa the entire day, as you can see in the first photograph. And he would sleep on the same because the transfer to the bed would be very, very inconvenient for him. And over the years, since he used the recliner, the spine had gotten a little bit inclined, which made it even more difficult for him to get completely inclined on a bed. So he needed a slight uh, elevation. And after we understood that part, we tried to, look into what are the spatial requirement for him to get transferred from his recliner to the commode wheelchair, which he would use for bathing and for, using the washroom as well. We realized that in his older home, there was slightly more restricted space, and the bathroom too had like a vanity below the sink, which would not let him use the basin countertop. The tap was a little more behind, which would make it difficult for him to, move a little forward and try and brush his teeth. So we tried to break down these different things by understanding his process of how his day would start, what would be his bathroom routine, then, how he would sit and work, at what height did he require his table when he would work using the mouse. He would actually type on the virtual keypad. So, he would require a slight more uh, support on his elbow and his hands as well. And towards the day, every day, he would also have his physiotherapy session, but he did not have enough space, and his transfer was quite difficult for him to constantly move from his bedroom to any other space to do his physiotherapy activity. Became very crucial for us to first understand the disability and Mr. Winnett's spatial needs based on his daily routine. We also needed to consider how the space and infrastructure would support him during a medical emergency, particularly in the case of someone with motor neuropathy. To gain further insights, we met Dr. Arjun Alva, the director of ICU Adult at Narayana Health City in Bengaluru, who helped us understand these factors and explained how accessible products like Hoist could be beneficial. He also connected us with the other necessary medical professionals and emphasized the importance of involving a rehabilitation team while we are designing, the entire house. Then met with Dr. Shrikant, the head of rehabilitation team at Narayana, and Dr. Ria, a rehabilitation consultant, who provided us with valuable insights into space requirements as well based on the accessible products. They emphasized the necessity of a hospital bed for Mr. Vinith rather than just a recliner and highlighted the importance of creating a timeline to support his rehabilitation process. Above all, they stressed the importance of asking Vinith how he wants everything to be designed and what is it that he wants in his journey, which brings us back to the need for understanding the user and their requirements. We further explored varied vendors and accessible products as per Mr. Winnett's requirement, and we understood that the market research further needed a critical eye. During our process, we explored a lot about Harmonized Guidelines India 2021, where we learned about the major requirements for an accessible home. This led us to looking at every single product very critically. And I think that's what led to our next step, which was define. Basically, what is define? Defining the problem using a unique, concise reframing of the problem that is grounded in the user's needs and insights. And why would we actually do that? This is mainly done to expose new opportunities by looking at the things differently, guide innovation efforts, make sure we have identified something worth working on. And it kept us thinking and questioning ourselves that why are things not accessible? Why, when the products, as per the accessibility standards, why are our normal practice, the practical approach that we take up, not as per these standards? Why is there a need to renovate something to meet the accessible needs? And it strongly made us believe that if you decide to do something, it has to be accessible. It's not a choice, you know. It is, accessibility is not a choice. Design and methodologies are, but accessibility is definitely not a choice. And that's why these two critical questions, that are you thinking about the need of all your users, and are you thinking about the need of your design thinking participants with disabilities? That's what keeps coming into play. And we very much believe that it has to be deliberately thought and implemented as well. So we got down to our drawing boards and we started picking on every small aspect which would be, when you consider a journey of a user in the space, what were those problems? And we started defining each of this problem. Once the problem is defined, we need to ideate, generating as many possible solutions to that one problem. And why do we do this? Because, when you generate maximum innovation potential in a short amount of time, to incorporate, different perspectives, you build excitement and you create, something out of the box. So at Pillar 62, we started by addressing the very important challenge, of navigating the process of obtaining necessary approvals to make the public and the private interface accessible at the very entrance. This entrance, we made it, obstruction free by negotiating the slopes. For the proper flow of stormwater to the reconfigured stormwater drain, and modifying the curb length outside, adhering to the RWA's terms and conditions. So when we think of accessibility, invariably a ramp comes to mind, right? However, we wonder if we have reflected on how ramps can be designed with countless variations tailored to the specific need of the user and the project. So at Villa 62, we conceptualized various typologies of ramps based on their location and need, with varying materiality and detailing. Uh, at the main entrance, we made sure that we followed the 1:12 ratio for the ramp, and even the threshold at the entrance, we made sure that it is not more than 20 mm, which was initially 130 mm. Makes it very difficult for a wheelchair to gradually, move into the space. The door widths were, the clear door width was not more than 2 feet in many spaces. And it's a very interesting concept that most of the bedroom spaces, most of the bedroom doors are at least kept 2 feet 6 in India. And, the toilet door becomes exceptionally small. And I wonder, how is somebody who enters through the door also able to enter through this, toilet door as well? We made a conscious effort of, making sure that as per harmonized guidelines, we made the clear width, that is excluding the door frames, 3 feet, which is 900 mm, and made sure that the threshold is either clear, or if there is a threshold, it's not more than 20 mm. These thresholds, not more than 20 mm, we had to, find out the levels, because before laying the tile, we have to look at the varied levels of the entire house. And even, a 10 mm would make a huge difference, because that would change the level of the way the tiles are laid. And Initially a 2.5-inch layer of concrete was poured and cured for a day. Subsequently, a 1.5-inch of layer cement concrete was applied. Following that, the tiles, which were measuring zero point 0.5 inches thick, were installed. In total, these layers, would measure a 4.5, leaving only 0.5 inch, that is not more than 10 mm or 13 mm of the threshold space. Along with this, we further made sure that, in Bangalore, there are a lot of mosquitoes. So we used the collapsible mosquito net doors, and we made sure that we had cut a slit to fit it inside so that it's a seamless, transfer for the wheelchairs as well. And while leveling, one of the most interesting thing that we saw was obviously the steps were not all at the same level. It is recommended that we have 6 inch as our riser height, but unfortunately it was 9 inch, 7 inch, 6 inch. And when we calculated the entire height of the staircase, we would end up getting at least 6.75 as a riser of each step. This led us to a lot of discussion with our contractor, and we even heard things like most of the architects practice this. This is a regular practice. 7 inches, all right, and why do you think you want to do this? And we had to educate them about how important it is to maintain a 6 inch riser. So what we did is, while we were leveling, we also considered adding an extra step, and we kind of increased the, if you can see in the diagrams on the right, we increased the wall a little more and added an extra step so that we are able to maintain a 6 inch, height for each riser of the staircase. As we started looking into the other details, we realized that most of the sink would be, at a height, and then the vanity would come down. And that's when it becomes difficult for the knee space for a wheelchair user. And similar to that is the mirror. When you're at a lower level and you're looking straight, you're not able to view yourself in the mirror. And it's very important to have tilt to the mirror as well. So this was another a problem that we looked into, and we tried to get a solution for the same. One aspect that Mr. Vinnet told us about is that his entire family would love spending time with him, and they would come and sit with him in the room. The older room, they had left a bed so that everybody could sit there, and there was not enough space for everybody to congregate in his room and have a good family time with him. So what we looked at is, we looked at an entire side of the wall which could become like a seating, but at the same time that would then take away the space we have for our study table, which he would eventually use. So we looked at a interesting feature where the table could become at the same level as the seating when required, and when he would work, he could elevate it and use it as a table as well. The idea of creating, modified wardrobe racks, which would become accessible and help, the wheelchair user be independent, to be able to, pull out the rack and be able to select whatever they would wish. So we went for a modified way of creating the wardrobe with these racks as well. One of the most challenging experience we had was definitely with the lift. We have called numerous lift vendors because we wanted a platform lift which wouldn't look as heavy, because it was hardly one floor that had to be traveled. And the other thing that we saw was that the clear door width, even for a lift, is not maintained as 900 mm, which makes it very difficult for anybody to on a wheelchair to be able to enter this lift. And once you're inside the lift, there has to be a space for a person who's accompanying the person on the wheelchair, and even the heights of your buttons, and how you would move up, everything is important. And we had to customize the lift with the lift vendor to achieve this, and also create we had to pre-plan this such that the lift pit that would, hardly be like 6 inch, the entire electrical conduit that needs to go out from the house into, the outside of the house to put up the unit, all of this had to be planned in collaboration with all the varied multidisciplinary people that would come onto the site, be it the lift vendor, be it the tile person, the mason. So this became a very interesting exercise for us. And, we went a lot back and forth, measuring his wheelchair, measuring the height of it, measuring how much space, you would require to even turn the wheelchair into the entrance. Then how would the whole living layout work out? So we had a lot of back and forth while we designed this lift so that he could use the entire house and not just the ground floor of this house. And in spite of being, particular on our drawing boards and through our research, there were numerous times where we had to iterate varied ideas on site, understand it spatially, show the client spatially, work it out between us. And it was a very interesting ideating process where we worked out these different ideas based on the problems that we had defined earlier. And this led us to actually pulling out each aspect, be it the ramp, be it the entrance, the door to his bedroom, which was made into a sliding door, the seating, which had an integrated table with it, even the motorized blind, because he would have preferred that at least to be able to view outside his room, the accessible wardrobe, be it the kitchen, be it the thresholds that are there near the doors, and even the accessible washroom for that matter. This was all in the ground floor, which was looked into and dealt with great details, and by complying to the accessible standards as well. And on the first floor, on a similar lines, these things were again further detailed out as well. Once we did the ideating process, it led us to the next, part, which is the prototyping. And in between the ideating and defining the problem, we had to try the prototyping as well. So what is prototyping? Well, it is creating a concrete embodiment of concept, which becomes a way to test your hypothesis, get you closer to your final solution. And why do we do this? Is to gain empathy, to explore, to test, and to inspire, to make sure that your idea is foolproof. So it's very important that we go through a process of prototyping, testing with smaller, aspects as well. One of the very interesting thing that happened with us on site is that, as I mentioned before, the door widths are very important. The clear width is not considered excluding the frame. It's considered including the frame. So when we told the carpenter that, you got to remove all these doors and make a clear width of 3 feet. So I told him, make one, show me how it is, and then, I'll come back to you. So when we did that and I came back, he had made the door with, the door frames included. So that makes the clear bit much lesser. And he never understood why we were trying to make, Mr. Winnett's room even further wide, because not just the wheelchair, the hoist might enter through that space as well. And this led us to the process of prototyping. Through our ideating and empathizing process, we understood that it's not a linear process. You have to go back and come back into this. And we restarted this process through our capacity building workshop, where we created a hands-on experience for all the construction workers, where they sat on the wheelchair, they moved around. We also called Dr. Arjun Alva back into the space to explain to them from the emergency point of view how the transfers happen for persons with motor neuropathy. And they then started looking at every small aspect. How much of a turning radii does this wheelchair really require? Uh, you know, uh, The plumber was very amazed that the position of the tap may not really suit what we are trying to do. So he needs to make sure that the plumbing lines are laid out right so that, the wheelchair user is able to, kind of make use of the tap appropriately. One more very interesting thing that came up during this process is when we started speaking to Mr. Vinith about the same, like where should the tap, what should the tap height be for him? How does he use, the tap to drink water? These are usually things that, we do it as per standards. And we understood that in his particular situation, he actually preferred, a faucet where like a drinking water faucet where the water would directly probably come into his mouth rather than him trying to use his hands to collect the water and put it in his mouth because he was not able to move his hand up and forward. And that helped us, coordinate between these two processes. We worked with the plumber and we found more accessible products where we got in like a faucet, which would, the tap had this extra connection, which would turn around and the water could directly come into the mouth rather than, you collecting it with your hands and using it as well. They also maneuvered through the ramp and they saw how, these smaller barriers, when we say, that 20 is enough, and they didn't understand initially, they actually, when they went on the wheelchair, they experienced that not just the slope, but even these thresholds can be extremely difficult to maneuver through. We even invited, the vendor for the Paramount bed, and he showed us how the transfer happens, what are the electrical connections that we require for a Paramount bed and for the other equipments that is needed to assess this. And the electrician also looked into this and added the required points being 15 amp rather than 5 amp. We usually do not provide a lot of 15 amp provisions in rooms, but I think it's important that we at least leave provision for this to happen in future if anybody is in need of it. And as we went on through the process, there were many areas where we had to test our concepts. We, in spite of having all these ideations and prototyping, we had to test it with the user. And it's very important. Why do we test it? To understand how the user, uses this concept, and it would gain empathy for the user and elevate the solution by understanding their, other requirements with what we have worked out. So we invited Mr. Vinith Shetty to, go around the entire space and help us understand what would be better to improve with his specific requirements. I think the vanity was something that we had not gotten right during our work. So we tested it by, just using wood and testing it, seeing the height at what he requires. We realized the vanity counter that we had given, the depth of it was a little more than what he required. And at the same time, we had to be very considerate about his knee space as well. It was a little tricky situation. And by testing this process, we were able to convert more appropriate vanity and sink counter for Mr. Bennett. And this gets us to the last leg of our module where we will walk through certain final pictures of the completed project. These were the three varieties of ramp that we tried to work out. The first one was at the main entrance, which was tiled by anti-skid tiles. The second one was made of concrete so that Mr. Vinith could also access the green area. And the third one, because there was a lack of space, we tried to use, an foldable ramp, which he could also use in the other spaces if and when required. His room was, completed with his favorite color blue. We even worked on the tile patterns, and because it was not like a standardized look with a bed in a certain position, we had worked out enough spatial turning radius for all the different equipments, be it the hoist or his wheelchair. We also used, clamp for the TV, which would actually move it around so that he could use it in the different positions that he would be in the room. As mentioned, the vanity was then worked out as per his requirement, and even the shower hand, because he gets assisted for shower, we hadn't placed it on the same wall as the commode and the sink. We moved it to the right because it would then create a problem for the person who's assisting him with the shower. They would get wet in the process when they would switch it on. So the direction of it was changed so that it's more comfortable even for the assistant who is helping him with the shower. This was another accessible fittings where we used in, especially for the bathtub. The elderly parents did want a bathtub because they were used to it, but we used anti-skid material on the flooring. We used grab bars and seating where required based on, the harmonized. The platform lift was finally, successfully completed, and it was very, very comfortable for anybody to get into it with a wheelchair as well as an assistant person to help with the same. This specific room was made as a multi-purpose room, which had a big mirror for the physiotherapy and the gym. And it had on the right side, if you can see, there was like a storage room made for the wheelchair, hoist, and all the equipments that are needed for the rehabilitation. Since the rehab is, 1 hour in a day, we also made sure that the room could be converted into a guest room. The sofa was a convertible bed, and it could also be used as a sit out if and when required. The kitchen aisle spaces were kept free, 900 clear, so that he could go around, as well as a 1500 mm dia for him to be able to turn around the edges, and he could easily access the kitchen as well. Dining had a slightly open plan such that the wheelchair could replace one of the chairs. The other bedrooms were also, it was made sure that there's enough space around the bed for, if he wants to go visit any of the other members in the family who are using those spaces. The common spaces were also designed as per his specific requirements. Very specific considerations were given for the outdoor spaces as well. Clear 900 of aisle space was left everywhere, such that Mr. Vinod could use every space in the house. And that brings us to the end of the module. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have enjoyed this module. Thank you.